Hello, I'm Mark Davenport, and I'm with
Heidi, and we are from the Wisdom Factory.
Right, which is a forum for people who have experience, knowledge, and wisdom to share with the world. And we have been doing these broadcasts, our weekly broadcasts, now for over a year. We had a previous series called the Wisdom Technologies, and you can find those replays on here. At
bit.ly/Wisdom Factory videos.
Yes, okay. And we also had a season of Conversations That Matter, and we have community gatherings, and we invite you to join our community at bit.ly/WF, that's capital, -community.
Okay.
We are interested generally in raising consciousness about topics of interest, and at our best, we do that from an integral level, or however close we can get to that. And we are couches. We are couches.
Coaches.
Couch was my nickname in college. Okay. Coaches and counselors, we are working together on the topic of relationships. Today is the second episode of our current 12-part series about wisdom in relationships, entitled Stop the Relationship, Grow Your Relations. We have 14 experts operating within the same integral worldview. And today, our very special guest, one of those 14 experts, is Christiane Pelmas, and she is a supervisor and senior level psychotherapist and mentor and guide in the community of Boulder, Colorado, where she maintains a full private practice. She also writes and teaches, and she does wonderful interviews. We saw one just a couple days ago. All right.
We will have it now.
Oh, this will be a wonderful one, too. And Christiane has a master's degree in clinical social work, and she's certified in sexological body work. She's the founder of a pioneering work called Rewilding, which focuses on the cultivation, care, and feeding of our erotic intelligence. And I want to know more about that. All right. She has created the Institute for Erotic Intelligence with Rensselaer Resch, her partner, her professional partner, I should say. Christiane is also the founder and executive director of the Global Culture of Women, a nonprofit that's dedicated to resurrecting the language and culture of women's wisdom across the globe. So
finally, we can say hello to Christiane.
And I can stop reading and close my computer up here.
The role of sexuality in human relationships. This is the title of today. Christiane, first we would like to ask you, would you like to add something to what Mark has?
Or correct something.
No,
that was beautiful, Mark. Thank you so much. It's humbling and inspiring to hear one's devotional CV read back to one. So thank you.
Yes, I'd like to hear that said about myself, for example. Okay.
So I have done quite a bit of publicity. Oh, I wanted to send out another tweet, so I have to reopen my computer. Quite a bit of publicity about sexuality in relationships. And the interest was yes and no. There are some people who definitely said no, because sexuality seems to have
fear response?
Some fear response.
Oh.
I would like to begin the conversation with asking you, what do you understand, or what is the definition of sexuality? Is this sexuality when I touch him, or when I touch his thing? Is that sexuality? What is sexuality?
I think that's a marvelous question, Heidi, because I think it's been co-opted quite a bit and truncated by industrial culture. For me, my working definition of sexuality is actually generative energy. It's the energy that generates form out of chaos. So it's simply the energy of generation or creativity.
So Eros, for example, then is something that's present in virtually any moment if we can pay attention to it and respond to it. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I talk about erotic energy, or that phrase that perked your interest, Mark, which was erotic intelligence, I'm just talking about the intelligence that impels us or enables us to create relationship. All relationship, not just relationship of intercourse and genitals, touching genitals and lust and desire, but that all relationship is Eros. So when we think about Eros, and Eros is the fourth god, the god that was charged with creating form out of chaos, the chaos of the universe, of this forming universe. And Eros was the manifestation that had the capacity to create meaningful form out of this vast and impossible to perceive universe of atoms and molecules bouncing around and hitting each other, creating form. And that's all relationship is, form.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm getting excited already. Thank you.
Yeah, it's extremely exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Very much. Well, you had something else you wanted to...
Yeah, I wanted to ask about erotic intelligence.
Oh, that.
I mean, that sounds very much like what we hear in integral. There is cognitive intelligence, there is mathematical, there is musical, there is emotional.
All these lines.
And I've never heard about erotic intelligence. So tell us a little bit. I believe that it is very important because
yes.
People seem to, almost everybody, have a little bit of problem with when it comes to sexuality, and I'm sure had it. I mean, what is the background to that, and what can you do in that work?
And when you say that, Heidi, you mean the background to this idea of erotic intelligence? Yeah. What is it? Where does it come from? Mm-hmm. Well, so when you were referencing this thing that we like to, the body of knowledge that is the multiple intelligence, like Gardner's work of multiple intelligences that we believe we've got, as you say, this mathematic intelligence, we've got natural intelligence or intelligence about nature and the wild, we've got kinesthetic intelligence where our body knows how to move. We've got all these multiple intelligences that we've delineated are really particular and extraordinary about the human being, with this triumvirate brain that we have that's really unknown anywhere else in any other sentient beings. I would actually say that erotic intelligence is the preeminent intelligence that governs and makes meaning out of all the other intelligences, that animates all the other intelligences. That erotic intelligence is the intelligence that allows us to survive. It's actually the preeminent intelligence of survival, because we do not survive out of relationship. We do not survive as solo beings. There's no such thing. We know that now, and we know that on many different levels. We know that practically, and we know that emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So erotic intelligence in my world, as I teach it, is our capacity to create relationships that not stable are thriving, because survival really is quite paltry. We have survival right now. The global world of human beings is focused on survival, not thriving. So erotic intelligence is the intelligence that enables us to not merely survive, but create relationships and systems, structures that are dynamic, sustainable, and vital, and generative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is an intelligence which is extremely fundamental, but at the same time not so well developed.
No,
as we may have.
I'm wondering, do you have an idea why we have, since generations and generations, so much problems with sexuality, let's say? Mm-hmm. No, and what is the connection with relationship?
So why does it seem so true and endemic in our world that humans have such a difficulty with sexuality, or it's so fraught with problems? Is that what you're curious about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is so curious. I think one of the reasons that animates my work really has to do with this fundamental disassociation that we've had through monotheistic religion, through economy, through really what is the structure of our culture. Those two monoliths, religion and money, economy, economics, that really have built their cultures around the dissociation of humans from their humanity, from their earthly being, this sort of extraterrestrial, non-human idealization of what it means to be enlightened or intelligent or in some way arrived. It does not at all come from a deep understanding of our wild nature or of our deep association with the earth, with death, with birth. We're death phobic. All these things that are really quite much the things we can't deny about our human experience tend to be the very things that we've attempted to create great distance from. And sexuality is at the foundation of all of that. This energy of how we got here. It tends to be the thing that drives us most primally, and it tends to be the thing that can often obsess and compel us to do things we're least proud of. It's the thing the culture gives least teaching to, and in fact gives teaching that is anathema to our healthy, owned sexuality. So I think it's simply that our culture has evolved to be anti-human.
Yeah, and now is the phenomenon that you come out and talk about that. So are we going towards humanization of our culture?
I think we are. I think out of necessity we are, because we're realizing that the Earth system itself is actually failing because of us. So we're having to turn our attention towards this thing upon which we rely for our survival. And with that, and how we've affected it and impacted it, and with that comes a whole, just a wealth of awareness of the things within ourselves, the aspects, elements, and impulses within ourselves that we have also denied in this process that has allowed us to get where we are today. So I think there's this great resurgence, and it's slow, and it can be frustrating, and it's fraught with co-option and misunderstanding and simplification. But my goodness, we will take it, huh? We'll take it. We'll take this trend that we have of turning more towards power with the Earth system and with the wild and with the natural systems and with the nature within us versus power over. So we are turning more towards that. And with that comes more of a question of sexuality. What is this thing that animates us? That is what we spend most of our living, breathing lives thinking about.
Yeah. Exactly. When I was 14 or 13 or something, and I thought the only thing I really want to do before I die, I want to have some sexual intercourse, and I had no idea what that meant. But the heads are full of thoughts. You wanted to say something before.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It'll come back. But I'm reminded, of childhood misunderstandings, the absolute ignorance. Now, my parents were, they said they were atheists. At least my father did, and my mother didn't disagree. But anyway, nonetheless, they were both Lutherans. That means there was absolutely no overt talk about sex.
No.
There were jokes in the bar and so forth and so on, and I was supposed to understand that somehow. But actual information of any use other than don't, was all I remember from my up until my late teens, really, and I just remember even at age 17, I just wondered, what does a human being who doesn't have a penis look like anyway?
Absolutely.
Really? I did not know. And I'm so old that, you couldn't go online. There was no line to go on. Pornography was just kind of unavailable, and it just didn't happen.
Yes.
That's where we start.
We are going into this life completely ignorant about sexuality and about how to create relationships. So what I would like you to talk a little bit, what a good sexuality can create good relationships and the other way around. So if you can say something about that.
Yes. Oh my goodness, Heidi. I might even need a little bit of narrowing down there, but I'll start. If I get too out into the stratosphere, just reel me back in with a specific question. The structure, the chemistry of sexuality, this thing we're calling sexuality, the chemistry of love, of safety, of soothing and calming, the chemistry of a down-regulated nervous system, the chemistry of ecstasy, the chemistry of, which is the chemistry of orgasm, but also the chemistry of the exaltation that happens in the approach to orgasm, that dopamine chemistry, the chemistry of touch that we've been so extraordinarily just impossibly endowed with, the chemistry of love that you're doing right now, oxytocin that gets released, all of that that's created within a healthy pair bonding or a healthy bonding of any number of people is that chemistry of sexuality. And it is, we're endowed with the capacity to generate extraordinary amounts of that chemistry with great regularity. It's really one of the bottomless wells of wellness that we have in our toolkit as human beings that help us create relationships it's relationships, to create relationships so that, not just create relationships and there we are, we've done it, but relationships so that we're particularly, uniquely, and almost mystically poised to offer ourselves into the world as these endowed, filled up, nourished human beings. The role of sexuality in relationship, but also just the role of emotional intimacy, so the role of sexual intimacy and physical intimacy, and the role of emotional intimacy in our relationships is primary. It's the fact that we learn, the necessity that we learn how to leverage and nourish and create and sustain this chemistry is really the extent to which we are going to figure out what has to happen next as human beings on this planet. So it is absolutely the most important endeavor in my experience.
I would like to bring it back to personal experience. I have had the experience when the emotional life in a relationship is disturbed. I cannot be in a sexual relationship anymore with this person. So it's that these are so connected, these things.
So connected, but not so for everybody, Heidi. That I would say is actually a function of your health, of your nervous system health and your sovereignty, your internal wellness. Because many of us learn how to not have emotional connection and intimacy, or in fact even exist within abusive relationships and use or leverage the chemistry, the really overt chemistry of sexual connection in order to feel safe and well. We learn as culture, that's really what pornography is all about. Pornography is profound. Pornography is an extraordinary example of, or the effect of pornography is an extraordinary example of the sensitivity of our human brain. 3 seconds, pardon me, 3 seconds of pornography, regardless of the content that the human being is watching. It can be repugnant or egregious to our moral system, but 3 seconds of pornography, and we're manufacturing more dopamine than we ever would in any other situation. So much dopamine that we're flooding our system and making it harder for us to absorb average or natural levels of dopamine in the next 10 minutes or 30 minutes. So pornography is an incredible example of how it is that we've bypassed the need to create emotionally intelligent relationships, to learn how to do this thing that this whole series that you've been so devoted to here, that the very thing that this series is talking about, how to create vibrant generative relationships that have multiple levels of intelligence. Pornography and sex itself have really been co-opted to have it be that we don't have to learn about that because we can feel temporarily well over here.
Yeah, pornography is the enemy of relationship.
It really is. And yet, if you think about it, it's really, you think about us as children in family systems that are really malnourished. Sadly, I can speak about what happens here in the United States, where we've got double income families and parents are just scrambling to make a living and keep a roof over their heads and pay their mortgage. And no one ever taught them how to be emotionally intelligent because mostly we don't know. And we are raising children in that environment where there's just not enough. And children grow up feeling unsafe, and they grow up not knowing how to create safety in the field because it's not there. So very quickly they learn one way to feel safe is this thing I can do with my body. And I feel so well when I do that. And I'm not allowed to talk about it because we don't talk about it. Even if we're not Lutheran, Mark, it turns out we don't talk about it. But I can do this thing. And now I found this other thing that seems to be, wanting me to do this thing with pornography. And I can feel so well. I can generate some modicum of safety in my world because of this mysterious thing I can do with myself. And in some ways, it's really an extraordinary adaptive measure. And it backfires on us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would like to interject a little bit. We have two people, Mark and Hans, talking somehow to each other, but it's a question for you. Do romance novels have the same dopamine generating effect, says Mark? And Hans says, more so for women than for men.
I will say nothing has the same dopamine effect than pornography, than live action people having sex. Our brains were not structured to deal with the impact of that many situations that fast. So no, romance novels are a whole different ballgame. They involve more of our brain than simply live action pornography.
More suited to women then, more of the brain. Huh?
Come on.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, and women want to create always the connections where the experience seems to be that men want to can divide it better to have just sex and not really connection. I don't know. That is my own experience and what I talk with women.
It's a generalization, but it does, in my practice of 23 years, it does. The generalization holds that women are more relational by design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know how much of this is just masculinity or maleness, but in the culture I grew up in, I never got, after the age of 4 or 5, I've never got any pleasant touching from anybody. My mother stopped touching me, and guys would just bam, bam, together, and until I reached the late teens, and I realized that it was okay to touch with my genitals somehow, and all that repressed, desire was all wrapped up in having sex. What a load on a penis, I should say.
That's such a brilliant observation. This is yet another thread that has led us to where we are now, where we're really starved for the capacity to have these emotionally and sexually intelligent relationships. It's so true, actually. Just heartbreaking studies have shown, starting in the 60s, that we stop touching our offspring, our male offspring, for anything other than disciplinary reasons at the age of 7. There's a complete, some studies show 5, that all the cuddling and the nurturing that we do naturally with girls and that we continue to do with girls well into their adolescence, we actually stop doing between 5 and 7 with boys, and we only touch them when we want to yank their arm to, no, you don't touch that. We're not touching. We only look with our eyes, or, don't handle your brother that way, or whatever. We only touch you when you've done something wrong. And there's a starvation that happens there. Actually, if we had to choose which gender to touch, we should specifically keep touching the male gender, because you are so kinesthetic and so sensitive, and so much happens in that place where we actually just lay our hands on you and let you know that the world is safe and that nothing needs to be happening right now. It's a destitution, and it's a heartbreak. Mm-hmm.
And the same thing the other way around, that fathers stop to touch the daughters because they fear that something can happen. I had once here in my house borderline girl for a while, and she made all sort of upheaval, and my partner then was able to get her, and then she asked him, why didn't you beat me? Then everything would have been fine. So she obviously got the only recognition, physical touch, by being beaten. Yeah. And if we think about that, how many children or have no touch at all, or get beaten, and this is the only way of being in contact. How much then we have to think that sexuality needs to give us. It's the only thing.
Yeah, which then has us focused on the outcome in sexuality, because we're not really focused on the good feeling that happens in the connection. We're focused on the goal, which in this case is orgasm, and in particular with men, it's orgasm coupled with ejaculation, which for women it tends to be just orgasm, that we tend to focus on the goal of the act. And so then we have a whole slew of things that come up, whole slew of problems or issues that come up because of that, because of our single pointed focus on this thing that's going to happen at the very end if we get it right, and then it's
get it right. Right.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Like this, and getting like this, all of a sudden I realize, oh my gosh, I can't get erect, or oh, I can't find my orgasm anymore, and oh my gosh, all these things. We're not even here with each other in this place. Yeah. But even in our self-pleasure, we're not here with ourselves. We're just going for that final goal. And so even in that, we've stripped the relationship out of it, and we're mining it, just strip mining it for that split-second experience we'll get that's quite finite.
Yeah. We have a question here from Jeffrey. He said,
one of our listeners, watchers, I would love for Christiane to speak to how, in her experience, couples can increase their capacity to relate to one another, both sexually and intimately, in more and more expanding ways, as well as how males having a deficit of touch can relate to females affectionately. Big questions.
Yes. Which one do you want to tackle first?
Let's do the second one first.
Okay,
how males having a deficit of touch.
Because he likes touching. He touches me a lot, and I like it because nobody has ever touched me.
No, of course not. You're modeling it so well. So
in the beginning,
TED Talk.
Yes. Go ahead.
So read me that question again, then.
How males having a deficit of touch can relate to females affectionately.
Well, okay, there's a couple of layers there. So males who have a deficit of touch are generally going to be inclined to over prioritize sex, and specifically intercourse, because what else is there if they haven't been taught how to touch? They don't know the value of touch, and they haven't slowed down to receive the value of touch. So one of the things, so actually let's couple both questions together because I'm going to weave them together. In our partnership, in our intimate partnerships, it's so important to slow way down. Anything having to do with sexuality, the first order of business is to slow down. That's the first order of business for everything having to do with sexuality. If you want to increase your capacity to have more erotic intelligence, you want to slow down and experience presence and mindfulness in each moment, which might be not particularly pleasant. You might experience anxiety or the boredom or whatever. But if you don't allow yourself to experience what's happening in the moment, that includes joy and ecstasy, as well as boredom, pain, anxiety, sadness, whatever. So slowing way down and allowing just the simplicity of contact, just a hand on the cheek, and just stay there for a few moments and just notice what comes up. And if you're habituated to being the couple who goes straight for intercourse, and you've got a 20-minute routine that happens twice a week, and it's just dandy because you both have an orgasm, so what more could you possibly want? Then, and you try this, you might hang out there for the first few times and sort of say, what the heck is Christiane talking about? There's really not a whole lot that's happening here. I'm kind of bored. I'm ready to get onto the intercourse. But the more you stay here and focus on what's happening right here, because miraculous things are happening. Mark, when you put your hands on Heidi's shoulders, the universe itself is happening right there. Every impulse that forged everything we know and love about this benevolent universe is happening right there between your shoulder and the skin on your shoulder, Heidi, and Mark, your fingertips. We've just not learned, we've unlearned how to be aware of that. So for couples to slow down and just touch each other and start from there.
Yeah, and I would add, not to do the touch for the other person necessarily, but do it for yourself. Feel how it feels like, you know, and not think you have to do a program. No, there and here and here and no.
I know he likes it because yesterday he really loved it when I did that. So I'm just going to do that. You two are just so. This interview is marvelous. I'm having so much fun. You're just so smart. Heidi, what you're describing is called sensate focus in some modalities, and it's the practice of touching for your own pleasure. And there's certainly the practice of touching your partner exactly as they want to be touched, and that's a sister practice that's equally difficult for us and equally intelligence building, where you don't touch at all until the partner tells you exactly how they want to be touched, and you don't just go on to autopilot. But touching for our own pleasure and not responding to our partner's, ooh, if we're done touching here and we're ready to move on to here, we do. Because we're curious about what happens when we touch our partner here is absolutely a magnificent, magnificent practice.
Yeah, and also how a shoulder feels,
Yes.
How it's made, how it's put together.
How a hand feels. How is it done? Exploring it. This is so. It seems to be nothing, but
it's absolutely marvelous.
It's a miracle.
It is a miracle.
It's a miracle. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Jeffrey had another half of a question, though. The first part.
No, she has a little bit how they can increase their capacity. She has answered, but there's another question of David. Dan Siegel's work plus mindfulness movement and mindfulness relationship are profound, and I've only discovered them recently. Slowing down is key and delicious.
Yes. Well, it turns out that presence is at the core, at the foundation of everything we do that has any value. I mean, there's just very little we can say that's as true as that. That having the capacity and the musculature of presence, which is also mindfulness, which is also embodiment, those three go hand in hand, is the first step to any endeavor, whether it's becoming the world's next most profound mathematician, or learning permaculture, or becoming an extraordinary lover. Yes, presence and mindfulness. First
of those three choices, I prefer the last.
Yes. might all be in agreement there. Somebody's going to do that, though.
I would like to add another thing. When we can get out of sexuality this idea of needing to have an orgasm, this is so liberating. Because, you know, as a woman, when you know the man expects of you, you have to have an orgasm, you have to hurry up and something like this. This ruins everything. And for men, it's more or less the same thing, no? Oh, hopefully she is. It's exactly what you say. When we can be in the moment and don't care if we have an orgasm or not, you know, then maybe it comes, maybe it's not, but it's not a big deal. You know, we had the connection in the meantime.
What a revolution to discover that orgasm wasn't necessary for wonderful sex.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There's also another part of that which is particularly intriguing, which is what if the orgasm isn't the end of the interaction? What if the orgasm is a gateway to an entirely new experience of consciousness? An altered state of erotic consciousness that is where, you know, it's a version of what shamans cultivate, to be able to have conversations of extraordinary relevance with other universes, other layers, other beings. This can start to sound a little out there, but only because we've covered everything with concrete in this world. Yeah. So what if orgasm isn't the, okay, we did it, but it's actually just, we are getting to the place in having the orgasm where we have a doorway through which something vastly different is possible. Whether it's for 5 minutes, 20 minutes, or the next 3 days, we don't know. But what if that?
Yeah, what if that? And how do we get there?
Yeah.
Well, was that a question?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, and it's the same thing. One of the things that really probably one of the most important things to our learning is even knowing what's possible, even being given permission to imagine what's possible, knowing what's on the menu. I have so many clients who work with me who really will voice that that's one of the primary things they're getting from the work, is knowing that the menu is 50, you know, their menu was a half a page long that they've been given from their families and their culture. And yet, the menu is actually infinitely expanding. So it's really magic that way. You know, page after page is discovered with the turning of each page. So even just knowing that it's possible that you might have a capacity to know yourself or experience a certain level of thinking or a certain level of embodiment, if you know that you can stay in that place post-orgasm and just breathe and just invite, is there anything else here that I might want to explore? Just stay in that place rather than get up, take your shower, and get on with your day. Pat your partner goodbye and peck on the lips. If no, actually, our sexual forays, we're going to add 10 minutes onto the end of them after we've had our orgasms, and we're just going to keep our heads together, and we're just going to breathe deeply, and we're just going to check it out. We'll just check it out, because we heard somebody on the internet say something about how there might be something over there on the other side of that orgasm. We just check it out. And that's the first way to find out what might be there.
And I would add not to get into, how do you say, disappointment if it doesn't work immediately, you know, or blame, I'm not good enough, or whatever all these inner voices say, you know, but just be curious and open. I think this is, and you know what, we have discovered play. Don't be so serious.
That is another thing like touch that we've lost. Play is so just neurobiologically healthy and generative.
It's fun.
Yep.
Yes, it is. It turns out, huh?
I needed to become almost 60 to learn that, you know.
Yes.
Before sex was a relationship, such a serious business, and now we have a lot of fun.
Yes, laughter and willingness to get it wrong and to not know and to just be goofy with each other is just so it's part of erotic intelligence.
And humble and not have to be expert.
No.
It's all right. No problem.
Yes. How would should you be an expert? Right. And in fact, you know, just as we might learn something about our partner, they go and change on us because maybe they had a baby, or maybe we lost our job at work and we've now been initiated into a new level of who we are. And, or, you know, maybe we've gone through menopause and our entire erotic map changes. Women's erotic maps change at least 4 times over a single lifetime. Radically change. Radically change.
This is interesting.
That is interesting. But I want to add to that menu, MANopause, which occurred to me about between 45 and 50, when suddenly, you know, the whole job world just didn't appeal anymore and didn't go anywhere, you know, and the children were just such a pain, you know. And I had no idea what to do with them, what to do with my wife at the time, and things just fell apart, you know. And it took a good 15 years to discover that there's something besides that whole role that I had played since my 20s.
Oh,
wait, was part of it.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the old penis went whoopo.
Absolutely. Absolutely it did. Thank God it did.
Harder than me.
I'm out of here.
No thanks.
Yeah. I'm not participating with this charade any longer.
But of course, I blame myself for that. I didn't know it was the wisdom of that member itself.
Yes, somebody's paying attention here. Going on strike. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's another number we play on men, is this idea that, you know, if you're attracted to me, you're going to be rock hard all night long. And if you're not, that must be either mean something about me, or you're thinking about somebody else, or, you know, what's wrong with you over there? It's a very blaming culture, and it's just devastating. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and of course I blame myself.
Yes. Yeah.
Let us ask Christiane a bit about these stages of sexuality. We were about
for women that she was mentioning.
No, generally.
Okay.
Is there a difference when couples or single people come to you when they're in their 20s and their 40s and their 60s?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's marvelous. I'm always so touched by this, and have so much appreciation for how we evolve in a single lifetime as human beings, that you know, we remember this, that as children, I'll start with adolescence. As adolescents, when sex hormones are really at their greatest production, they're peaking into their greatest production, we are just driven by chemistry. We're driven by chemistry. And so the need to be emotionally intelligent is very low, because there's so much chemistry that an entire relationship can function just on the peaks, the ebbs and the flows, these miraculous ebbs and flows of chemistry. So all of our sexual interactions with a partner or partners can be just off the charts just because of the chemistry we're creating. And certain anatomical features, like for women, the glands, the head of the clitoris, is just a prime example of we just touch it like a doorbell for many women at that age. And we're just, woo, you know, we don't need to think about anything else. It's just the best that there ever was. And we have these great experiences. As we head into our 30s, of course, our chemistry starts to lessen, starts to level out. And the need to have some emotional intelligence mixed with the chemistry, the physical chemistry, starts to increase. And then that's where we often find ourselves at a great deficit. Like, how do we get back what we used to have? And of course, that intersection and the relationship of chemistry versus the need to be emotionally intelligent just keeps increasing over time, where we end up in our 40s and our 50s realizing that vast things are possible in our sex if we know how to create the emotional intelligence to make room for them. But we're not going to be driven by the chemical high and the chemical ferocity that that occupied us mostly in our teens and our 20s and our early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a fabulous process that happens if we're paying attention and if we have elders to teach us.
Yeah. Well, they happened with me, but there was not much learning from it for a long time because of the real isolation. Well, not just men, but I think is more common with men. You know, they just talk to themselves about it.
Yes, exactly. Right, exactly. And what we can come up with, which is what we've come up with in this culture, which is that, well, by and large, women stop being interested in sex, you know, in their 50s and 60s. They're just not so interested. And it's that their orgasm has gone deeper geographically, physically, physiologically, deeper into our bodies, but no one taught us to follow it. And the thing that our partners, you know, we'll just go with the heterosexuality model here. The thing our male partners have been taught to do doesn't work anymore, but we've not been taught to be exploratory. So we just start imagining, well, I guess sex isn't that important to us, right at the time when sex could actually be the most extraordinary foray into the nature of the universe, into the nature of our uniqueness and our partnership. We just start giving up because we imagine that it's done.
Well, that's where we are, at that wonderful possibility stage.
Yes.
And we've been exploring that in our we've been together just 4 years now, and it's just been an absolutely completely different relationship than either of us have ever.
I'm
Oh,
muted. Yeah, okay.
Okay, we were muted for a moment. And so I'd like to hear what you have to say about the later years.
Did you say the leaner years or the later years?
The later years, not the leaner years. No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, absolutely. And in particular, Mark, what the later years and what sexuality offers and what the sexual landscape is like in the later years.
Yeah, well, we know where we've been. You know what's coming if we stick with it and do our homework. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. What's coming is probably, it's hard to compare these things because they're a little bit like apples and oranges. The sexuality of our youth is a whole other ballgame. It's just so physical and it's so driven by that chemistry and it's just delightful and innocent and primal in that way. And we just want it all and we want it all the time. And as we come into our 60s and our 70s and our 80s and our 90s, it becomes almost this deep rumbling of a just almost sort of earthquake where it's not peaking with this chemistry, it's relying on the wisdom of our embodiment, our faith that there's depth to be found, and already our conversations with the not here, already our conversations with what happens after this. So much is available in our sexuality that it's transcendental, it's mystical, and it's just profoundly humbling and human, this way to make sense of what we've just been up to for the last 60, 70, 80, 90 years in these bodies, but not being hijacked by the chemistry of sex, which tends to be kind of a hog. You know, the chemistry tends to just want more of itself. When we aren't producing massive amounts of that chemistry any longer, we're given the opportunity to explore, you know, vast other realms. And sexuality really does take on a capacity to channel, you might use that word, or to just experience cellularly what's happening, just cellular awareness of what's happening. Deep connection with other.
Yeah. So before you have talked a little bit about transcending and things, and I wanted to ask you, so many religious, even today, spiritual groups deny sexuality. I mean, Catholic Church has done it and the Protestant Church has done it. So don't we cut ourselves off from a real big chunk of our human experience in thinking to go, I don't know where,
to sublimate, to go beyond, go above, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This idea, well, we touched on it really early on when I was talking about the monotheistic religion that really is based on an extraterrestrial entity that requires us to, divest ourselves of all embodied human, humus, humble, decomposing, gritty parts of us. Absolutely. And so transcending out of this idea that we can, like what's happened in the neo-tantra world, where we're just going to bypass all of the grit and shadow of the human experience, which is so much where all of our power and our genius comes from, to have this otherworldly experience. That form of transcending does not seem very helpful, does it? It doesn't. It's also, in fact, just quite dangerous. And just quite, because we tend to want to do that anyway.
Well, you say that, you mentioned that, reminds me that having studied integral for some years now, gradually noticing my own level increasing, it also allows my awareness of lower levels to increase. I don't stay in the middle, and I can appreciate, what Wilber calls the purple magical stage, in a way that I couldn't possibly have even considered 20 years ago. Not at all.
Isn't that marvelous? Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Harvesting from those places. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We are sort of have to look a little bit on the hour. I wanted to tell everybody that afterwards we are going on blab.im. I am. And then, unfortunately, on this computer, I cannot put the direct link in, but you can find me under Traviata, TRAVIATA, with a big T in the beginning, and then 56. And then you find the blab, where we will talk again about sexuality, and everybody has the possibility to come on camera and talk with us. And you only need a Twitter account, and you can create it right away if you don't have it. So this is one thing.
Yep. And I just wanted to repeat that for people. That's capital T, Traviata 56. And Traviata is her favorite operatic heroine. She, in case you hadn't noticed, has an operatic voice. Sang for many years.
I came to Italy to learn singing in this opera way, because in Germany we sing a little bit normally with a reduced voice, because it needs to be educated and nice. In Italy, that's why I ended up here. But before we close, Christiane, I would like you to give a little bit information about how can people reach you, how can they work with you, your workshops and whatever is on. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, sure. Thank you for that opportunity. Yes, you can reach me all sorts of ways. You can reach me by email. I'm not at all cloistered in any particular way, so anybody who feels inclined to reach out can reach out at any time, just personally. So you can reach me by my email, which is just my name, at me.com. That's one way to reach me. I have way too many email addresses. You can also go to one of my websites, my private practice website, which is just The Rewilding. So TheRewilding.com, The Rewilding. You can find me there. You can also find me at magnificentlover.com, which is the Institute for Erotic Intelligence website. magnificentlover.com. That tends to be where all of the classes that I teach with my teaching partner, Rensselaer Resch, are housed. You can reach me there. So there are any number of ways to reach me, and just Googling me gets you to those places pretty quickly. So,
okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was really great.
Do we have to stop now?
Yeah, we go ahead. Christiane, if you have time, would be wonderful. I sent you the link. We start in about 15 minutes. We just a little interval here is evening, and we are hungry. Just have a little bite, and then we continue the dive into sexuality and relationships.
Well, we better repeat that link for her. Yeah, the blab link. If she's able to.
Well, I tried to put it in here, but I couldn't. This is the other computer. So then you find me on blab.im/Traviata56, and there they will give you, or when you go on my profile, you'll find all the past things we have done, and also the one which is on or which is scheduled. Yes. Yeah. So,
if you can, great. We'd love to see. Have an opportunity to talk more, and people can come in and ask you questions. It's much more informal than this.
This is more sort of a presentation what we are doing here, and there is more. You can be dressed however you want to, even morning gown. Okay. So thank you so much, Christiane. It was a real pleasure, and I hope we can do that again and go deeper into this. And I'm especially interested in the women's thing you are doing.
Beautiful. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for having me. It was a delight.
Oh, thank you, Christiane.
See you on the other side, and thank you everybody who has watched and who will watch in replay. We are happy and that you are here, and join us again and find us also on the Wisdom Factory, and we have also another website, The Power of Relationship, because we are trying to talk to people over 50.
Like ourselves.
And relationships.
Yes.
Okay, bye-bye, see you there.
Bye-bye.